And we're live. It is Wednesday, the 25th of July, and I could not have predicted when I received EJ Wittes's draft of today's Dog Shirt Daily how completely Dog Shirt Daily's "Tell Me Something Interesting" column would dovetail with UN declared international days today, because EJ Wittes discovered yesterday or the day before that John Adams, our second president, was soft on naval sodomy and
Buggery and buggery.
buggery. In
Apparently,
fact,
is that a synonym? I had no idea.
apparently so, at least in British
I like
naval
it.
law. So,
Buggery.
buggery. And he did some research on why John Adams left out of the U.S. naval regulations during the Revolutionary War, which, by the way, remained out of them for many, many years. And we will have more on this subject in dog shirts to come. The British prohibition, punishable by death, of sodomy and buggery. And um, I know you might have been asking yourself, why did Ben Wittes and EJ Wittes choose the 25th of June, 2020, the year of our Lord, 2025, to give us this information, which, after all, has been true for many years? The answer, unbeknownst to me, unbeknownst to EJ Wittes, is that today, the 25th of June, 2025, is the day of the seafarer, according to the International Maritime Organization. And this year, um, it is more than a celebration, it is a call to action, says the Day of the Seafarer page on the International Maritime Organization webpage, because we are building a harassment-free ship, they say, a bold initiative to promote a culture of respect and zero tolerance for bullying and harassment at sea. The Day of the Seafarer 2025 is more than a celebration. My harassment free ship is about changing the maritime culture to one where every seafarer feels safe, valued, and protected at sea. So, zero tolerance for bullying at sea, but tolerance for, as John Adams had, consensual buggery and sodomy. Because what two consenting adults do at sea, as on land, is really just their business. And so, as John Adams, down unto the International Maritime Organization in 2025. Let's keep the toleration at sea thing going, the harassment free thing at sea going. It's, uh, you know, it all starts on June
So that
25th,
was in
2025.
1775 that buggery was omitted from the criminal code. I'm sure someone put it back.
Well,
Probably positive
that's the thing.
people.
We're going to have more on this with the history of rules concerning naval sodomy. But for now,
I think we should only call it buggery. I think
bug.
yeah.
Um,
That was sodomy. We have discovered buggery
how
and
about we are going to call it whatever the code of the relevant country calls it at any given time? So you'll be able to see the change in, from buggery in
no.
1749 in England to, um, anyway, look, folks, the sun is scorching. The birds are so weathered and dried out that they are not chirping. They're sort of croaking. But it is going to be a great frickin' day, whether you engage in buggery or not. Um, or on a ship, whether you're harassing somebody on a ship or not, because you are watching Dog Shirt TV. And let us point out that the cactus and the snowman are safe. They have been relieved from Holly's custody. Um, and the cactus has something to say.
Apparently not. Oh, but he's doing his little dance. That's so sweet.
He can't speak
He
anymore.
can't speak, but he can dance. Aw. Aw.
You
Oh,
are watching dog, and the cactus and the snowman is sort of triumphantly watching as the cactus kind of completes his demise. You are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a goddamn revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features is that Holly is just up and leaving and going on vacation and going to take a group to Kenya. And next year, you could be part of that group. Um,
if everything goes well. Yeah.
and another one of the revolutionary features is that the show will continue. We're not quite sure how, but we did do 708, almost 800 episodes before Holly started coming on the show. So we will
Wow. How did you
somehow trundle on in her absence until she comes back. She has promised to do an episode from Kenya. Um, and that's the way it is. All of which is a long winded way of saying that we're not allowed to have fun anymore. But we are allowed to have Holly for one more episode before she turns into a Kenyan pumpkin, um,
they eat pumpkins?
as well they should.
Yeah. I have
Holly,
I
how
have
are you doing this
I,
morning?
I'm very tired because I couldn't sleep last night. But before I tell you why I couldn't sleep, I have a brief, actually this story I'm about to tell you leads into the why I couldn't sleep. So it's perfect. It's all perfect. It's all like synergy. Um, but I have a seafaring story for you.
It's the. Do you know, Holly, that it's the International Day of the Seafarer?
Yeah, yeah.
Does your
Okay.
seafaring story involve harassment?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't involve me, thankfully, though. So, for my book, I looked at missionary children and missionaries, from the beginning of American missions in the early 19th century. And the children, oh my goodness. Well, first of all, these missionaries back then, they would, you couldn't just zip around the world on a plane. So when they went to their where they were going to do their mission, it was often for life, and they often died of disease while there. So anyway, one of the most
I,
famous.
I'm constrained to make a joke about that, about, the life of man being the life of the missionary being nasty, brutish, and short. But
Well, it often was. So, and it was, and for the children, it's actually really sad. Sorry to bring us down, but um, the children basically were raised until on the mission field until they were school age, and then they were literally put on a ship. This one child I looked at was put on a ship alone at age 6 to travel for months on a ship to America. At which point, he would be farmed out to a family he didn't even know, and rarely, if ever, see his parents again. So that's how missionary kids started.
family values.
Yeah, and they would preach. They would judge the natives about their family. Yes, indeed, indeed. But this one family, one of the most famous missionary families in the 19th century, and they were like celebrities, were the Judsons. And this was the Judson family. And Mr. Judson went through 3 wives because they kept dying of disease. Very inconvenient. So he just married the other widow from the other missionary that died, and he kept going, and he had a number of children. And so this was one of his children whose account of it was that his brother gave the account of his voyage, and he made some oblique, as they did in the 19th century, statement indicating that George, this little boy that was put on a ship at age 6, was probably abused on the ship. I can't imagine he wasn't, let's just be honest, right? Anyway, where was I going with this? I don't know. George on the ship, um, yes, never seeing their parents again. Yeah, but they judged the natives for their family values. So there you go. I think that was the end of my story. Maybe I had
That's
another
a
point.
bleak story,
Well,
Holly.
it was very bleak. But anyway, I have this historical chapter to kind of situate the missions in the minds of evangelicals, and also because obviously we weren't put on ships at age 6, but this idea of like your children are just that they may have to pay a price for the mission, and that like Jesus comes before your children. That pattern has definitely continued on. So, and that's one of the themes of the book. So that leads into why I couldn't sleep last night. So I have linked up. I've discovered through the Missionary Kid network that there's a new independent film called Ben Between Africa. Um, and this filmmaker's mother was a missionary child, and her uncle died as a Peace Corps volunteer after they all were raised in Ethiopia, and then he came back for college, and then he went back to Ethiopia as Peace Corps. Anyway, he died tragically and somewhat mysteriously. And then the family has various, of course, dysfunctions. So anyway, this filmmaker does kind of a live investigative look at her family and her uncle's life and death, and then finds all the letters from the children when they were in boarding school at age 6 and all the way through adulthood, and kind of maps out her family's story, which includes a lot of themes that I talk about in the book. So she sent me the film to watch because we're doing an event together in DC in October. So October 18th, venue TBD tickets, but the film is so good. And I watched it last night, and it just like wrecked me. And so I was up last night thinking till like 2 a.m. and I'm very tired today. But anyway, she's also doing various screenings around the country. There's actually an earlier DC screening if you don't want to hear about me, because she and I are doing a joint. We're going to screen the film, and then we're going to have a conversation, and then about the book and the film, which go together really well. But she's doing various screenings. It's called Ben Between Africa, and it's very moving. Even if that's not a world that you're at all familiar with, you'll learn a lot, first of all, but also, yeah, it's just about families and intergenerational trauma and how things are like passed down and not dealt with, and how that kind of affects dynamics in families. And yeah, it's really good. Oh, you sound like a robot all of a sudden. Hello, Nastya.
Super cool. Hello, Nastya.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can. You look like
I
you're
think
in
my internet
one
is
of
bad.
those. You look like you're in one of those famed Kiev bookstores.
Indeed. Exactly. This is my natural habitat. This and
Yeah.
Arctic Norway, apparently.
So tell us about this bookstore.
Oh, it's relatively new. I think it was opened like last year. It's right in front of the Golden Gate, which is like an
Okay, so
important
explain
landmark.
something. Explain something to me. How can it be profitable to open a bookstore in a city in 2025 in the middle of a city that is under relative, near daily rocket attack. How can that possibly be a good business move?
I mean, it gotta be because they open like every other month. It feels like there is a new bookstore, and all of them are constantly like cramped. Like it's hard to find a table because it's taken by people like me and freelancers who work here, and all of them have a cafe as well, so you can eat, you can drink coffee. It's like like when you meet someone for coffee, you meet in one of these like bookstore cafe type places. So it's not just to buy books; it's like a whole social phenomenon. But also, I think like a lot of people are reading in Ukraine. Uh, it's kind of like therapeutic, I think, for people, and also a lot of people are rediscovering their identity or discovering Ukrainian culture. So there is this boom on reading as well.
That's kind of cool. It would be cool if we could have a boom on reading in the United States, but it doesn't seem
It
like
would
that's
certainly
happening
help.
here. Yeah, I
You will
mean,
see it
like
when you
I don't
come to visit.
My people are gonna love
I'm
to just read crazy shit.
yeah, I mean, I think the argument for having more reading in the United States would be quite good. You should start with Holly's book, um, which is you can order it now, right?
Pre-order. You can order the audio now, which is not me. So if you like my voice, then sorry, but it's probably
If
better.
you like Holly's voice, tough shit.
Yeah, you can watch this show. But most people, I don't think I have a particularly good speaking voice. And also, I have this weird habit of like, not when I'm talking, but when I'm reading aloud, I develop this compulsion to yawn like compulsively. It's very strange. And so that would probably come into play, I'm guessing.
It's true, although one of the cool things about audiobook reading is that um, they do have this person sitting in a control booth when you read an audiobook who just breaks in whenever he or she wants to. Read that sentence again. Read that sentence again. Read that sentence again. Reading an audiobook is exhausting. You want to
Yeah,
talk
I
about like I did Susan Hennessy in my book we read ourselves. It took my half of it took 2 full days. And my chest after each day felt like I've never spoken for, 8, 9 hours at a time before. And when you do that, it actually hurts like you strain your chest muscles, your audio, like voice actors, it's an incredible skill.
Yeah, well, I don't think I have that skill, so it's probably for the best. Although, I it could be fun to read your book. I don't know, but you've just convinced me that it's best that I didn't. So I don't know, but the person who does it sounds great. I don't know, sounds better than me.
How's the person's Swahili pronunciation?
I don't think there's Swahili in the
You didn't
book.
get the word shagala bagala in there?
No, but that could be the subtitle of the book.
It's the title of your
The
autobiography.
kids shock.
It's your autobiography title.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
So Nastia, what have you been up to have you gotten a single decent night's sleep over the last few days?
I have actually. So two
See,
days
there
ago there
are
was
good
another.
Russians.
Jesus, Ben, please. You're about to ruin my day.
Come
But
on, that was a funny joke.
yeah, I know, I know. So on Monday there was another attack, which is so annoying because I mean it's clear that they sort of do it on purpose because they launch these mass attacks like every Monday. I think for the past 3 or 4 weeks, every Monday has been a really bad attack, which sucks because then you don't get any sleep and you kind of feel terrible for the rest of the week. Like it's really hard to for you to kind of like recover. And yeah, so that happened. but we are honestly at that stage of like we don't even go to the shelter anymore. Um, so because it's impossible for us to sleep at the shelter, and everyone is so grumpy, and your back hurts a lot from sleeping on those couches and everything. So we just stay at home in the corridor. That way, Ava and I can both get some sleep. But it's really scary. So, like the last time, for example, this Monday, I woke up in the middle of the night from this like really weird swoosh sound, and I thought it was, and it was an unfamiliar sound. I've never heard it before. And I thought it was Eric playing some missile video thing on his phone, but apparently it was an actual missile that like flew right near our apartment. Because Eric was up all night, so he heard it. And I woke up and I was like, what the hell was that? He was like, oh, it was a cruise missile. Go back to sleep. I was like, what the fuck? It's just like, just happens. So, it's terrifying, but at least we get some sleep out of it, I guess.
There's a good meme going around of Ukrainian work culture that says Ukrainian work culture is very flexible. If we survive, we show up to work. If we don't, we don't.
Exactly.
And um,
That's exactly right. Also, we also joke that we have war-life balance, like work life, but war life. It's kind of,
yeah, that's a pun that
things are
works in
so bad.
English,
Those are
but
the
it
jokes
doesn't
you
work
make.
in Ukrainian. Um, uh, all
I
right.
have a
Well, what's
question for
on your
two of you,
mind this?
though.
Yeah, sure.
So I've been thinking about the Arctic as I do on a regular Wednesday. And I remembered, it's so funny. I just remembered my trip to Kirkenes and I started thinking about everything that happened there, and it got me like giddy and excited just because I remembered what was happening. And so I remembered the story about this like academic who was working at a university in Arctic Norway in a city that has important NATO installations. And he turned out to be a like deep undercover Russian spy. It was very especially funny was the fact that he was researching Russian hybrid threats at that university. And so I've met like an
Being
academic
one himself.
who's from that university. And so I was just thinking about that, which made me think about the fact, or led me to this question of, have either of you encountered Russian spies in your life? Because apparently it's not that uncommon. Like, have either of you ever met
I'm going to
someone
let
who
Holly
then
go
it turned
first
out
on
that they
that
are
one.
in fact a spy?
Holly, you have a more interesting vantage point on this, being a former CIA officer. Have you ever met a Russian spy?
Um, Not yet. Maybe. Yeah, I guess so. I can't elaborate. Um, yeah, I probably met, I may have met more than I think, but I've met, because anyway, I won't elaborate. Yeah, I think so. Yes, I have.
I'm not going to push Holly to explain further because, uh, she actually does have obligations to classified information. Um,
I'm not sure what, anyway, I'm unclear as to the lines there. So.
yeah, so I will say there are I've had a couple of interactions with, so let's just say coming to Brookings events is a very, I mean, intelligence services of all sorts do that all the time.
Really?
And
Why?
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Um,
know I sound super
and
naive,
Me
so
but
too.
can you walk me through this?
sure. In fact, I would assume at the Brookings event at which you spoke, there was some presence of some foreign intelligence services. Um, so first of all, most intelligence officers are here in, at least from allied countries, are here in a fairly disclosed capacity. They're not
Okay, can someone text in the chat? Is it my internet or everyone else's internet? What is going on?
I think
Whoops.
everything, I just got kicked off. I think it just ended.
I got kicked off too.
There are
Did you
two
get
Bens
kicked
on my
off,
screen.
Nastia?
Yeah,
It's
I got
very
kicked off.
creepy.
Oh, there are so many of me. I am legion. All right,
This is
let's
so weird. Especially considering
Yeah,
that you were
it
just
just like
speaking about Russian
spontaneously
spies.
booted me.
hey everybody, we are back. I have no idea what just happened, but we're gonna blame the Russians for it.
There's still two of
And
you
we're
on the
just gonna
screen.
pick
Is
up
that
where we
okay?
left off. I'm sure it's fine.
Okay.
So most foreign intelligence officers are here in a disclosed capacity, that is, at least from friendly countries. And so,
Non-friendlies. There's disclosed and there's undisclosed
right. And, you know,
or declared, as we say. Declared.
declared. And so one of the things that they will do is, they're here to liaison with our intelligence services and, frankly, to spy on us. And it's better to know who people are than not. And so one of the things that they do is they go to public events. And, you often see when you do a Brookings event, you'll get a list of RSVPs, and there will always be people from foreign embassies, and some of them are intelligence officers, and that's perfectly fine. There's, nothing. Now, some of them are people who are uh, semi open about it, and some of them are there with some degree of, they have some other title like a political officer or a, officer for shadowy stuff.
Is it true
But,
that pretty much every
there
military
are,
attaché is one? I've heard
yes,
that. Yeah.
there's, I mean, there's a whole dorm in it's actually right near the Obama's house. That's the next time you're in Washington, I'll take you to see it. It's a dorm that's part of the Russian embassy, and it's called the Russian Embassy Military Attaché. It's basically the GRU office in Washington,
It's the Russian farm.
and it is mutually yeah, it's basic. It's mutually advantageous for for the Russians and for us to, we otherwise they're going to send them here undercover to one degree or another. So this way you kind of know who they are. And if the question is, have I run into such people, uh, in the course of my day-to-day life, as a think tank person, and as the answer is yes, it happens. And there was one incident where one of my colleagues, met with this was back when Russian American relations were much better than we are now. We also brief foreign embassies on a fairly regular basis, and so, I have a personal policy that I don't meet with non-democratic governments, non-elected governments, but a lot of my colleagues, particularly who work on stuff like China and Russia and stuff, they can't take that position, right? And so, you will often have, one of my colleagues had a series of meetings with a Russian political counselor in the embassy, and then got a visit from the FBI just warning him that this
In the
person
Russian
was
embassy?
GRU, and, not telling him not to meet with him, just making sure he knew. And so that kind of thing, I wouldn't say it happens all the time, but it does happen.
Do these meetings happen
The
inside the
other
Russian embassy?
interactions I've had, what's that?
Do these meetings happen inside the Russian embassy? Because that seems
Yeah, so
highly
I'm having a little
problematic.
trouble hearing you, but yeah, so I would say the more you engage with the Russian embassy, which I do not, but the more you engage with the Russian embassy, the more certain you are to interact with, you know, with espionage officers. It's just a part. It's a big part of what they do here. And if you come to Washington, I can show you physically espionage facilities in the embassy compounds that are very visible from the street. And so the other way that I've found that I have engaged with Russian intelligence or security officials is during my operations. They pretty openly interact with me when I do that. And they, of course, always deny who they are, but they deny being Russian, but they're not subtle about it. And so, yeah, I mean, you wander around circles in Washington that involve Russia stuff, and you're going to end up engaging with Russian intelligence operators all the time. I mean, not all the time, but not infrequently. You just stumble upon each other. Is that a fair characterization, Holly?
To the extent I heard it, anyway, I'm managing some trip issues. But yeah, to the extent that I heard it, yes. Sorry.
Which is to say, I wasn't listening to you at all. But
No, the Russian, yes. So there's declared officers and there's not. And did you go through that? Yeah, and so the declared officers all know who each other is. And then not only, and even undercover, like our undercover people, some of them are declared. It's not like openly declared. It's declared to the service, the host service. So like CIA would know who the declared officers are.
And it's mutually advantageous to both sides to have a certain degree of cooperation, a certain degree of openness, because number one, we do have this. This sounds crazy to Ukrainians, but it is a long-standing U.S.-Russian understanding that we don't target each other's intelligence officers, and for that purpose, it is
What
worth
does that
knowing
mean?
who they are.
What does that mean
I'm
we don't
sorry?
target? What does not targeting mean?
We don't kill each other. Um,
Oh,
and
that
so,
that's
you
the only
know,
thing that means.
with,
Okay.
well, it's a big deal. I mean, you have 70 years of post-war Soviet U.S. interaction in the intelligence sphere, and there is this common understanding that we don't kill each other's intelligence officers. And there's no, you know, with other countries, the Russians do not play that way. And so there's some value to a sort of mutual understanding. And do all kinds of things to each other. We may irradiate each other, but we don't, we don't target each other's intelligence officers with lethal force. And we lost Nastia again. Now, when we target Russians with lethal force, we have the cactus for that. And, his strategy is this. Because, you
No,
get
he keeps dancing and he's distracting, and then the snowman. See, they're a tag team. Like this, the even when he's like dead, like he's still looking happy and like he's distracting. I mean, his look is distracting, and then the snowman comes in and is the stealth.
finishes you off
So the cactus is
silently.
declared, and the snowman is undeclared.
Right, exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
Sorry, guys,
So
my
why are
internet
you
was
thinking
going crazy.
it's okay? So why are you thinking, Nastia, about declared and undeclared intelligence officers in Washington? Oh,
Uh,
also, there are certain bars and restaurants that you can hang out in if you want to see Russian intelligence people.
You know how I feel about this. I would rather not if I can avoid it.
Can't imagine
Uh,
why.
yeah.
She might have to be restrained.
But I was just thinking
Nastia,
about this.
have I ever told you about my interaction with Umbrella Man when I met him finally? So
I
Umbrella
think.
Man
Hate that guy.
is this burly guy. I don't know if he's actually Russian. Um, who I have 45 minutes of video of blocking my projectors with umbrellas
Yes, I remember this.
um, and chest bumping one of my colleagues and me. And so and then we filmed him walking into this building where he apparently lives. And so a few weeks later, I am going by that building, and I see him on the street walking his giant gnarly dog, who actually turns out to be lovely. But and so I'm completely
Was it a
since then I've
shepherd?
seen him about a dozen times. No, it's like a Rottweiler. As he later told me,
Oh, that's
it's
such a
a
Russian dog.
Serbian Rottweiler.
We
Um,
had one when I was a kid in our family. It's like the most stereotypical Russian bad guy dog.
yeah, it's a real Russian bad guy dog, but the dog is lovely, and all dogs are civilians. And so I pull over all of a sudden, um, and I say hi to him, and I said hi in Russian, and he goes like this and looks over and then pretends not to understand. He sees me and pretends not to understand. And so I greet him again. And he, and I don't, by the way, I don't think he's Russian intelligence. I think he's a thug. Like, I don't know what, he's some kind of
The
security
line there
guerrilla.
is very blurry. He very much could
What's
be.
that?
I'm saying the line there is very blurry between a thug and an actual
Yeah,
agent.
but he's not like intelligence implies some. I think he's just a hired bit of muscle. Um, so I say to him, and he says, plays dumb and says, "Do I know you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, you're Umbrella Man." And he looks at me, fake confused, and says, "Excuse me." And I said, "Aren't you the guy with the umbrella? I'm the projector. I'm projector guy. Aren't you umbrella guy?" And he says, "I don't own an umbrella." Um, and I said, "Weren't you out here? I was projecting and you were blocking with umbrellas." And he smiles at me and goes, "I don't remember that." Um, and I've
Right,
seen him
of course.
several times since then. And the transcript of all of this, I got home after this and immediately wrote it down and posted it on Dog Shirt Daily. And the person I was with verified the transcript. So there's something close to I would say, a near verbatim transcript of it on Dog Shirt Daily. And I think he was, like, I don't know what his relationship with. He doesn't live in the embassy compound. He lives next door to the embassy compound. He claims not to be Russian. Um, and he claims his dog is a Serbian Rottweiler. Um, I don't know, you know, I've never figured out who he is. I have many pictures of his face. I have not been able to identify him using any facial recognition technology. Um, and I have given his face to, well, let's just say both our FBI and the Ukrainian embassy is aware of what his face looks like. And so I don't consider it my business, like if yeah, if he wants
I
to hang out outside that park. I'm pretty convinced, by the way, that he's the guy who's destroying sunflowers. Uh,
So did you have you said you had some vandalism this year, but that's private property, right?
yeah, we had some vandalism the other night. The biggest sunflower was uprooted entirely. It was clearly a message. And again, this is Nastia, to your question, this is directed by somebody who's in the embassy security. Whether I don't know how exactly it's being done, but it's clearly organized, and we had unfortunately a little camera failure on that evening, and so we do not have video of who did it. As I said in yesterday's dog shirt, guys, if you're watching, go ahead, motherfucker, try it again. Um, just try. Do you feel lucky, punk?
recently read which was so random. I don't even remember how I stumbled upon this article, but it was the article done by one of the Stanford newspapers about the Chinese spying situation, which apparently is a really big problem. And it said there, and I may be forgetting the exact parameters of this, but I'm pretty sure it says something like that all Chinese citizens abroad, like there's some law that says that all Chinese citizens abroad must collaborate with the Chinese government if the government asks them to. So, like, if some random Chinese student is studying at Stanford and a handler, reaches out and asks for some information, they must collaborate, like by law, by Chinese law.
So,
That's
so
insane.
it is a real problem, and the Chinese have uh, a lot of coercive leverage over their citizens abroad, particularly to the extent that there was even for a while basically a police station, a Chinese police station in New York that was being used to coerce people abroad. We have
And all
also
these people
not
have
been
families back
great
in China,
about
right?
Yes, or many of them do, not all, but it's a serious problem, and our response to it has often been a problem as well. That is, we have not always been great at distinguishing between people who are functioning as intelligence officers or agents and people who are, uh, you know, just Chinese nationals in the United States. It's a genuine problem in counterintelligence. One other, if you want to look at Russian intelligence, sort of active measures stuff involving U.S. civil society and politics, look at the case of Maria Butina, Butina.
Is
She's
that
now
the
a
random
member of
Russian
the
academic?
She's that red-haired like Instagram.
She's
That went
now a
to in
member of the Duma. She was
Yeah,
not an academic.
Like a Russian
Um,
researcher
Instagram
in
uh,
DC, right?
she was a
Something like
student at
that.
AU and a gun rights activist whose job was to penetrate the
right wing.
gun rights ecosystem.
Which is so weird because, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there are gun rights in Russia.
No, but she was allegedly setting up a Russian NRA,
Yeah, that Putin would totally be
because
fine
he
with
would be
that.
totally into that.
All the citizens having arms, that would be something he would really enjoy, I'm sure.
But she's a bit of a celebrity now in Russia,
A big celebrity.
and uh, she was a um, having an affair with multiple well, with one prominent American Trumpist businessman and one lobbyist.
I'm
The
so curious about that. I would love to. one day somehow know how intelligence services are like treating that tactic. Like, I
Well,
We
wonder if
don't
the
we don't
CIA
do
does
this
that,
that.
by
this
the way.
case
Well, you
We
this
do
say, okay,
not
case
I'm
do
is
not gonna
that.
pretty.
believe you, Paula, just telling me that you don't do that. I'm sorry.
No, we really don't. The
Right, of
Russians do
course.
anything and but we do not do that. Now
But
we
you,
might like
but
flirt and lead
there was a
people
pretty
on.
good podcast series made about the Butina case, which is, it's a little bit overly sympathetic to her. Like I think um, the narrator and writer of it is a little bit too credulous of her bullshit. But the basic story is all accurate, and she does have a pretty good, um, you know, pretty good other views on it. And so I think it's worth, uh, if you want to see sort
So
of a story. It's not about academic infiltration, although she did infiltrate American University and was,
it looks
a
like such
graduate
a
student
typical
there.
Russian agent. It's like every spy show I've ever seen that would have like a redhead Katerina that's like a KGB. They would all look like this.
Yeah,
Like all of them. What's with the redhead vibe? I
right.
don't
And
get it.
she was not. Yeah, I mean,
I don't think she's a natural redhead.
there's a lot of dumb guys, and
Oh, so
and
dumb.
the
It's so easy, actually. I mean, I think CIA probably used it at one time. But speaking of women in the CIA, my former teammate is just out with a book. I'm going to try to get her on the show when I get back. She was my teammate there and has become an author. This is her second book, actually, and it's
excellent.
about women in the CIA. So
There have been a bunch of good books about women in the CIA recently. Liza Mundy, my old Washington Post colleague, has a book on that as well.
yeah, there's a quite a cultural. I'm sure she's going to talk. We were analysts, and the analytics side is kind of mirrors academia is very kind of not progressive, but like DEI friendly and all of that kind of thing, and does it has lower tolerance for boorish behavior and such. But the ops people, that's like a whole different thing. I'm sure she's gonna air some dirty laundry. They've had some badness, and it's a very male cowboyish culture over there. So
You should have started with the fact that she also has a parenting book. How my career as a
yeah, which
spy helped me raise resourceful
yeah,
kids. I'm buying that.
no, don't. I mean, you should buy it because she's a friend of mine, okay? But I did not read that book because I have a philosophical problem with parenting books. And I
Right.
told her,
What's your
like,
philosophical problem with parenting books?
nobody knows how to parent a child.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Nobody knows how to parent a
Yes.
child, and people make money off of telling you like what worked for them, worked for you, and it's bullshit, and it makes people over anxious and like hand wringing. And the real fact of the matter about parenting, Nastia, and whoever else is listening, it is heavily the outcome of your child is heavily, heavily genetic. Unless you
And
abuse
luck.
and luck, there like various other influences for sure. But unless you abuse your child,
Like that
okay,
Yale professor.
you're like abusive parenting has a huge impact. But other than that, I do not believe that parenting actually has a huge impact on outcomes. And so that's why I put as little effort as possible into my parenting because it's a
Okay,
waste of
I
time.
might not be totally on board with that final thought, but in principle I understand what you're saying.
If you want to bang your head against the wall for 18 years and think that you're going to produce a successful child because of all of the shit you put yourself through and make yourself do, like again, like show the key thing is you show your kids love. You see who they are, you nurture who they naturally are, okay? You acknowledge and affirm that in them and you love them
That's a
unconditionally.
lot of
If you
parenting.
don't, they'll pick
As
up on
someone
that.
who's from Ukraine, doing what you just said that's a very big challenge for a lot of Ukrainian parents out there. So
It's a
like
big challenge for a lot of
this,
American parents too.
here you
But
go.
seriously, that's the whole ball game. And like other than that, like I don't know. I don't believe in I honestly do not. Parenting was not a thing until recently. People had children and they just were there and
Yeah,
they
that's
probably
true.
beat them.
That's true.
And they
Yeah.
gave them
Yeah.
food and whatever. And
Yeah.
it was parenting was not a thing. And so now there's this whole
And
industry.
they sent them off on missionary boats. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I want to foot stomp this point, um, because I um, I have been on both sides of this. Um, I have been um, my kids are grown up. They're out of the house. The younger one is Nastia's age. So I'm done with the whole parenting thing. I don't
Is
need,
the
I
younger
don't
one
have
It
a
out of
never
the
daughter.
ends
house?
though, does it? It never ends.
They're both out of the house.
Really?
Um,
EJ is out of the house too?
yep, they're both out of the house, and I have adult kids. It's not my responsibility anymore. Um, and I have to say that the amount that people think that parenting outcomes, good and bad, are about them is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Um, and, you know, if you have kids who have wildly exceeded your and other people's expectations and whatever, first of all, uh, it's probably luck. It probably has almost nothing to do with how you raised them. If you have kids who are in prison and who are axe murderers, unless you know whether you abuse them, it probably has very little to do with you. It may have something to do with you, but it probably doesn't. Um, by the time they're 5, they have personalities that you cannot control.
But then
And
after 5 months,
I'm not gonna agree to this.
my
I think
children were totally different people, like from weeks old.
yeah, I mean,
I think you guys are taking it too
yes,
far, to be honest.
yeah, but that's because our kids are older than
Yeah,
yours.
that's right. You just keep slogging it
No, but
out,
I
Nastia.
no, but I also have a very problematic relationship with my parents, and so I'm doing a lot of reflection,
Okay, so
and
but that's different. So Nastia, that's different, okay? The relationship you end up having with your children is influenced by your parenting, and usually it's influenced by, frankly, over-parenting and authoritarian style parenting and bringing too much expectation. That's a different
yep.
thing. In terms of who the person is going to be and how successful in life they're going to be, I think that has very little to do with parenting. But your
I
parenting
think
absolutely will shape the relationship you end up having.
I think you can be a bad parent, and I think you can do bad things that influence the child well into their adulthood, and you can
Oh,
show bad,
100%. Bad parenting,
Uh,
so
yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Agreed. The question is whether through some vision of perfect parenting, you can mold children who will go through life triumphant, and whether when your kids are triumphant in something, you should take credit for that.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah,
and my
okay,
view
I
is,
understand that. Okay.
um, my, my view is, you know, the my, my view is, well, first of all, nobody should write a parenting book until their kids are 50. Like when your kids are
Forever.
50, um, you can say, all right, they're past the point that I had any, like, whatever positive or negative influence I have has had washed out. And secondly, people write parenting books when their kids are still young. How do you know you've been a good parent? When your kid turns 15 and turns into a psychopath, um, are you going to say, well, that was actually because it turned out I sucked at this? Now, maybe it is because you sucked at this, but maybe it's also that you were always inflating your influence. So I'm not interested in parenting books by people whose kids are still 8. That's like just like
Okay,
not.
I don't believe in parenting. So, Nastia, I think follow your instincts. That's what people have done for like
I
millions
haven't
of
read
years, or
I
actually
haven't read any
millions of
parenting
years.
books.
They've just basically just thrown food in the trough and continued their farming. And parenting as a modern phenomenon is totally different. But
Nastia
it's
sent me a picture the other day of Ava having completely destroyed a room, and that is perfect parenting.
yeah, no, that's good.
Um,
As long
you
as
know,
But
we're
it's
all
like
safe, she can do whatever she wants.
yeah,
parenting is ultimately it's a relationship. It's like any relationship, and you are
Yeah.
in relationship with a person who is separate from you and has their own personality and wiring, and you have to learn to, and it's an instinctive process. And if you have more than one kid, you know this is true. They are who they are, and you have to figure out how to be in relationship with them. But what I'm saying is around here anyway, the hyper parenting where they're so strict and the screen time and the this and the oh you got to do this and put them in piano lessons and like
No
you
sugar.
can't let them have like
I
sugar
thought I
and you
was gonna
can't
do that.
it's all bullshit. Like it's just bullshit.
We ate a lot of ice
And
cream
if
last
people
night.
want
It
to
was
and if people
fabulous.
want to like seriously all my friends just knocked themselves out and they were just like miserable. I was miserable too, but at least I was well rested. But
Okay,
like
but here is my
they all this like parenting and they have all these theories and I have a friend who homeschools her children not because she's a religious fanatic, but because she just wants to control every aspect of their she can do it better than the school. And I'm just like, what are you doing to yourself, honestly?
okay, but here's the question. In my experience, it seems like the American parents are, and this is in my experience, it seems like the American parents are sort of the logic of like, once you turn 18, you're out of the house and I'm not responsible for you, and whatever you do is up to you, which then
I wouldn't
translates
say that.
into
I wish that were the case.
like, kids figuring out how to pay for college on their own and kids figuring out where to live on their own and things like that, which is like unthinkable in Ukraine. I understand part of this is the class divide. Like if you don't have the money, then there's only so much you can do for your kid. But like still there is this, if you're middle class in Ukraine and if you're generally doing okay, like there is this thing of like you have to make sure your kid gets to college, you have to make sure your kid has a place to live, you have to make sure your kid
I know we do all
gets
that. We
like
do
is
all
the,
that.
okay, because
well,
I've met
I
some
think it's
kids
very.
who are like, working for 5 years to make money to go to college, and I'm like, are your parents okay with this? Like, it's just weird to me.
I mean, some people
You
don't,
know what I
some
mean?
parents don't have the means, say,
Right.
but
I
I
know. But
think it's
if you
very
do,
variable.
is it generally accepted like wisdom that if you have the money, you get your kid through college? You don't make
yeah.
them.
Yeah,
Okay, okay,
in like in a lot of social circles, that would be considered a parent's obligation.
okay.
Absolutely.
So it's the same like in
And
Ukraine. Okay,
there's a very but there are social circles in which that's not, and it's somewhat class dependent. It's also somewhat, if you went to college, you tend to feel like college is a prerequisite for everything in life, and you see it as your obligation. It's can be less, and some people in the some many working class people really see sending their kids to college as kind of part of the American dream, so definitely see it
right.
that way. But there's also a lot of people who, you know, have a kind of I didn't go to college and you don't need to go to college attitude. So I think it's super variable. It's super it depends on background and cultural milieu. We have, it's a very, very diverse country, and people's attitudes toward things like that are very diverse. One thing that our attitudes are not diverse about is that we end on time. And so the cactus
So
wants to
smooth.
wave goodbye to
Wow.
Holly, um, and He says, I will be okay until you next see me. The snowman responds with his usual cryptic silence. But Holly, we wish you a great trip. This show has ranged from sodomy on Revolutionary War naval vessels to modern parenting and to how to identify Russian agents in your day-to-day life. It's been one of the more diverse shows we've had. It's a great way to send you off. Holly, I will be expecting
Lots of beef.
spectacular beasts.
Yeah.
And Nastia, stay safe, and we will see all of you soon.
Bye.